Hello, tech friends, and thank you for tuning into Emerging Technologies in Business, where we take a deep dive into different technologies that are impacting businesses today and in the very near future. I'm your host, Brock Riney, and this podcast is brought to you by Kincannon XR. Let's talk tech. Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another episode. Today, I get the pleasure to speak with Jeri Ellsworth, the CEO and co-founder of Tilt Vive. They're a holographic gaming system, allowing the use of holographic gaming right on your table at an amazing price, if I might add, with 720p definition, 110-degree field of view. Tilt Vive's innovative optical system creates brilliant and vivid 3D realistic holographic images that rise directly from your table. Jeri, thank you so much for being here today, and tell us more about Tilt Vive and this amazingly cool gaming system that you've created.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me on. And what a great blurb. You did a great job. Can I hire you in your spare time to promote?
Anytime. I'm a free man. I follow where the money goes.
All right. Well, what would you like to know about Tilt Vive? It's been a long journey for me. It's something I've been dreaming about for a long time. So it's very awesome that we're delivering and people get to experience it now.
Well, I think let's just start off at the very basics, right? So can you walk us through how the light reflective board works specifically with the glasses?
Yeah, let's put it in comparison to other systems out there. So, I got my start doing augmented reality and virtual reality at Valve Software. I helped them put together their team that did the HTC Vive and ultimately the Index. And when I was there, I had the opportunity to work on stuff that was probably 20 years in the future, just through brute force and Gabe giving us a giant budget to work with. So we did VR and AR systems like everybody else is doing there, where you try to put the light directly into your eyes, which has some real utility and advantages to that. So VR, you can have really immersive wide field of view. Whoa, that was cool.
Lost the helmet. It's all right. That one will survive.
Yeah, and but there's some downsides to that, just putting light into your eyes directly. So these systems are all fixed focus. That means that the light is coming from off at the horizon. And so this causes some discomfort in a lot of people where you can't wear a VR or an AR system for extended periods of time because you're forcing your eyes to focus off at the horizon, but you're converging on objects that might be much closer than that. So you have to trick your eyes into doing something they don't normally do. And on like AR systems where you have a combiner, they call it, so waveguide, or there could be birdbath optics, or there's all kinds of ways that you can do it. You have to fight against all the ambient light in the room, so you always end up with images that look very ghostly and can't draw blacks, and that's just one downside. Advantage of that, though, is you can walk around the world and have graphics floating almost anywhere, which is really cool.
Right.
But everything in life is trade-offs, and especially in engineering is trade-offs. So what I discovered about 9 years ago, is this clever method where instead of putting the light directly into your eyes, we generate a light field out in front of the glasses. Then we have this special surface that returns all that light back to you. It's called a retro reflector. And what a retro reflector is, it's just millions of little lenses that are embedded into the surface that just make the light do a 180-degree turn. And so by doing this, instead of putting the light into your eyes, we get to create light rays that emit from the glasses that are traveling the correct distance and the correct angles and then returning at the correct angles, as if these virtual objects were really there. So when you converge your eyes in and you focus on them, it feels like they're really there. They have this really solid presence to them, and it's comfortable to look at. You're not forcing the lenses in your eyes to focus, out at the horizon perpetually. And, what's kind of fun is, when we first started developing this, so many people scoffed at us. Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just beam the lights directly into your eyes? And I had to I was just pounding my fist on the table, this is the way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to take so long to solve all the problems in the other headsets, that this is the most practical way for the could be as much as a decade before
For the
anyone can
mass
get.
adoption, for sure, because some
Yeah,
people,
yeah.
they just can't wear those headsets at all. It just doesn't work for them. I love this
Yeah,
idea. Backwards. It's the other way around, and it's more adoptable that way. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah. I come from the toy industry. I did a half dozen toys, and that was a very great experience for me working with the toy designers because they're always looking for a clever way to do something that's magic. And so, it's overused, think outside the box. But, in the toy industry, a lot of times they do. It's like, can we achieve the same thing with something that's a fraction of the cost or has 4 times the fidelity than the more expensive way? So they're constantly scouring technology and like, hey, what was too expensive yesterday that's just suddenly got cheap enough that we can do today? And in our product, there's hundreds of little examples of things that just perfect timing. Everything just lined up in the last few years. Micro displays that were bright enough, micro optics where we can generate this light field, polarization specific films that can get our efficiency to 85%. And and they all became like the right price at the right time. So now we have a headset that for a certain use case outperforms everything else on the industry for a fraction of the price. Like you can buy a dozen of ours for the price of a Magic Leap or a HoloLens.
Right. And on top of that, it's also a solution for those that just can't use anything else because of dizziness or headaches, or we're just still not to the point where 100% mass adoptability is really a reality yet. So it's great to have another option too that changes the perspective of everything.
You know what this all reminds me of? Back in the 80s, I'm a child of the 80s. We all had our 8-bit computers and we were very loyal to our brand. You might have been Atari and I was Commodore, and it's like, yours sucks because it can't do what mine did. And in the XR space, there's still a little bit of that. It takes me back to my childhood. It's like, sometimes people are like, well, my VR system can do X, Y, Z. And, well, your VR system can't do A, B, C. And
we're Nikes and Adidas all over again. It's just but
the reality of the industry is it's wide open right now. There's so much space for
it's the Wild West.
50 different variants, just as long as they provide, some kind of functionality that the user is delighted with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is the Wild West right now. We're all still trying to figure out, or, it's the California gold rush all over again in the XR space. We're all just staking our claims wherever we can find them realistically. And if it pays off, great. Then you found the right claim. Good on you. I don't think
from a business perspective, you go all the way back in the early days of video games, like, oh, Atari's not around really anymore. Like, they're obviously a failure. And it's like, oh, no, they were the king of the hill. There was a lot of money made there, in the early days.
It may have only been for this amount of time, but it was the early adoption phase, right? That's when everyone bought up. So, they may not be around now, but they sure made a killing back in the day. They did just fine.
And nobody could predict back then who was going to be the next Apple, Microsoft. If you go back and look at the history of a lot of these companies, it's like, why didn't Burroughs or CDC become the Apple of the future? They should have. Like, they had mainframes and they had all the technology and all the money. And here comes like Steve Wozniak and Jobs in their garage.
Right. Nowhere.
Made an inferior machine compared to a mainframe, but it resonated and they just built off of it.
That's just how it works sometimes. All right, so next question for you. So I know this was the largest AR project on Kickstarter, and you also you alluded to this a little bit, right? So more than a decade of working in the reflective holographic board, glasses, T5 controllers, trying to get them into mass production. I'm sure there's been some barriers along the way. So what stumbling blocks ended up not hindering, but ended up vastly improving the end product by the end? Because I'm sure there was something where you couldn't get past it, and then there was a breakthrough, and it just vastly improved everything.
Yeah, there were a bunch of things. So in the earliest days, I had a startup prior to this where we were doing a very similar product called Cast AR. It was right in for those of you familiar with the Gartner hype cycle, VR, AR, anything, you could go to Sand Hill Road here in San Francisco or in the Bay Area, and you'd walk away with millions of dollars, and they'd be just like, go have fun, try to figure it out.
Right.
Well, it was a little bit early, things weren't ready at the time. And our group, my team and I personally, we weren't mature enough to like deal with getting so much money and not having a clear vision of what we were going to do. So as painful as it was going through my first startup and not succeeding, I learned a ton of lessons. So I think that's the number one thing that was important for Tilt 5 is I had to learn some really tough life lessons about, having extreme focus. What is your product? Who is your audience? What's the value proposition? Because in the early days of VR, like you didn't have to think about that because they were just people were throwing money at you and hoping you stumbled onto something. So after, all the hype died down for VR, the money dried up, but a group of us is like, this product is too good. We need to figure out how to get it on the market. And so we go out to raise venture capital, and now we're not getting $15 million. We're getting $500,000. And they're like, what can you do on $500,000? And so forced us into really thinking about, all right, let's narrow our scope. Let's find our audience. How can we provide the maximum delight in the tightest package that we can design with very little money? So it allowed us to hone our product. And as painful as it was, getting checks for $500,000 and $600,000 and trying to pay engineers with that forced us to really sharpen our focus. And so by the time we got to our Kickstarter, we needed to raise more money. And the Kickstarter wasn't for the cash necessarily. It was to prove that there was a market fit, because every investor we talked to is like, I'm amazed when I look through it, but I cannot evaluate if anyone in the world wants it. And so financially as a company, we had very little money on the table. Or in the bank. So we pushed all the money on the table. It was just one big gamble. It's like this small amount of money for marketing and like, let's hope it resonates. And it did. And we ended up knocking it out of the park. And then because of that, we proved that there was a market and people wanting to really come around the table and experience video games for the first time, as holograms. That helped us raise the money that we could scale the business. Still have not raised as much money as we did right out of the gate before, but it's actually a blessing in disguise. We just have to be really precise about everything we do. On the technology side, however, in all of this time since when I left Valve Software, just pieces of the technology's fallen in place. So there's a piece of technology we developed for the headset we call it the reprojection engine. And so it was not possible 8 years ago, 9 years ago to do this. There were no chips around to do this. But what this chip does and the software that runs on it, it allows us to receive images from the game that's running asynchronously over any transport medium that we want. We use USB right now. It could be Wi-Fi or 5G. We remove all the latency out of it. Say the game's only running at 50 frames per second. We upscale the frame rate. We interpolate it up to 180 frames a second. So no matter what's happening in the game, the experience for the user is buttery smooth. So the knock-on effects of developing this piece of technology that wasn't possible a few years ago is now we can do really cool things. Like we're the only company in the industry that I know of that's doing a spectator mode. So with our system, say it's a single player game. I plug my headset in, I start playing. My buddy comes over, I'm like, hey, plug your headset in. Now you can spectate because we don't have to maintain insane frame rates. So my friend can spectate. Well, another friend comes over, plug another headset in. You can all spectate, and it doesn't bog down the computer doing that. And it also makes multiplayer games super simple. If you don't have to deal with networking, right? If you can just have every headset show up in one instance of Unity or Unreal, everything's perfectly synchronized, everything lines up. And so that's allowed us to develop this like group play modality in our system that's not really out there in VR and other AR systems.
What a cool thing, too, that you can, such as a game. I mean, I in my brain, immediately I go to, this is probably the most elaborate Dungeons and Dragons game of all time. And what a great idea that you can have people all across the world seeing the same game, playing with the same dungeon master who can make the same effects happen to the board. All at the same.
And one of the lessons we learned at my previous startup is I'm just a technologist. I focus on like optics and electronics, and that's my sweet spot. And we were just trying to make a hunk of plastic, and we had the assumption that, if we build it, they will come. We learned a valuable lesson. If you build it, doesn't mean they're going to come, right? And so at Till 5, what we've done is we've split all of our resources 50-50. So it's, 50% of us are working on this incidental piece of plastic that just happens to project, air quotes, holograms out there and lets you use your magic wand to move things around. The other half of the company is equally hard working on finding interesting content for the system. So you mentioned D&D. We're like, this is an obvious use case. If you can make holograms on a table, we should be able to do D&D with it. So we went out and scoured for all of these virtual tabletop companies, and we started bringing in these virtual tabletop companies.
Brilliant.
Helping them get their software on our system. So now there's things like Battle Map, where you can, as a dungeon master, you can procedurally generate really cool terrains with all the tiles on it, and then you can drag in monsters and traps and dungeons and buildings, and you can plan out your whole story, what you're going to play through with your friends, and then they come over, plug their glasses in, or even network, over the network, you connect. Now you can run through your campaign, and there's some really cool stuff you can do because each person has a unique view into this world. So, I'm the dungeon master, so I get to see where everything is. My notes are in there. I know what's right around the corner. My friends, they've rolled for perception. Some of them might be able to see the toxic spores. Some won't be able to see it. And what we found is we watch people play with like this particular tool, like the experience is really heightened because now there's private information. Like, so someone that maybe has more perception sees there's toxic spores coming out of that mushroom and someone can't see it. They have this like, thrill of knowing that their friend's going to walk right into it. That, things that you had to try to like imagine. Forget. Yeah. So it really heightens even simple things about the games. Then on the video game side, we were just dog fooding. We have some test applications inside the company that we test things. And we have this new multiplayer driver with spectator mode coming out. And so we've been doing a lot of dog fooding. And we just have this silly little physics demo where you can splash water around. You can pick things up and move it around. And so 3 of us were just testing, looking for bugs. And we're just playing in this really dumb sandbox. There's no gameplay to it at all.
Right.
And just out of the blue, this fun little game mechanic emerged where there are little platforms, and depending on which side of the board you're sitting under, you can hide things under them. So one of my colleagues started stealing my pieces that I was collecting up on my side and sticking them under platforms. I'm like, give that back to me. And I'm moving around the table like, I can't see it. I can't get to it. And you can take like simple game mechanics, and because it's social and group oriented, it becomes really fun. Like the Nintendo Wii is a great example. I remember when that came out, I like run in hardcore gaming circles and everyone's Spatooey. I'm never going to own that. It's for children. It's terrible. It
was fun though. It was fun.
It was fun. And a month later, all of us had it, right?
Everybody had a Wii.
And we're
all checking your age on that fitness thing for some reason, and you're just hoping that you might be lesser than 45, I guess, whatever it was at the time. I could never catch my age ever once in that game. No matter how well I batted or bowled or whatever at the time.
Either, and it's insanely fun. And sometimes like us in the XR industry, we get too wrapped up on pixels and thises and that's, and Our goal is just make it fun, whether it's a video game or a board game or Dungeons and Dragons. Like, we just want to maximize fun.
I see your board, and the first thing that I thought of was Star Trek and 3D chess.
Oh, yeah.
The whole idea that you could play that with somebody else, somewhere else in the world, brilliant idea to me. And I just knew that someone's going to come up with that because it's perfect. It's literally made specifically for that, too.
I find it funny is, as I talk to investors, as we grow the company, and I talk to potential partners, and they're always like, what's your killer app? And I find that maybe a little annoying because the killer app is different for everyone.
Right.
What's the killer app on an IBM PC? For one person, it's a spreadsheet. Oh, boring. Like, I don't want to do a spreadsheet. For me, it's video games, and what we're seeing now that we're starting to ship a ton of units out there is like there's these little verticals that are popping up all over the place. We just launched this new piece of technology called Mixcast that lets you stream out composited video of what you're doing. You've probably all seen it in VR where people are playing Beat Saber or you're composited in. Well, we have the same thing where you're playing a game and it's composited on, and you can put it on Twitch or TikTok or wherever and share it out. There's this whole group of artists now that have been using this tool called Figment XR, and they're doing this beautiful art, and they're bringing in 3D models and drawing and animating them and adding physics to it, and they're streaming it. And here's this killer app for the artist, because now you have this volumetric, shareable space where you can draw together for the first time ever.
That's awesome.
Not super interesting to me. I'm not an artist. But holy cow, they're having a great time. And then other people are playing games, and other people are doing like Battle Map Studio, and it's really cool to see it all coming together.
I did have a question I wanted to ask because I know that you're a pinball aficionado. So, first of all, do you have a favorite pinball machine of all time? And did pinball have any hand in naming the company Tilt 5? As an ode to your pinball enthusiasm?
So favorite pinball machine depends on my mood. So if I'm feeling feisty, I'll play Getaway. It's a Steve Ritchie, which is all about cars and running red lights and getting away from the police and debauchery. Super fun. If I'm feeling really like chillax, and I kind of want to just zone out, I might go to Addams Family or something.
Addams Family was a great one. I played that one a lot.
Yeah, I'm a pinball collector. I have about 80 of them, so I have a lot of choices depending on my mood. So
no doubt. I grew up playing pinball, so every summer my dad would take me to the bowling alley. We'd play a round of bowling, go play pinball every single day, Monday through Friday. So I'm a hardcore pinball person.
We have pinball coming to Tilt 5. It looks beautiful. I've got to see an early drop of it.
It'd be so much fun.
And with spectator mode, you can plug in and watch.
How cool would that be to be able to play side by side or do two-person mode where you can watch? Play? So much fun.
And things that have never been possible in pinball, right? You could have a monster jump out and eat the ball, and then you might have to use the magic wand to knock him over the head to get him to spit it out, and things that
different ways to get a multi-ball, or I mean, there's so many different options.
Crazy physics and anti-gravity modes and stuff where
things that aren't capable right now, but could be capable in that world. Yeah. So I did want to ask about the glasses because I haven't had a chance to ask for this. So I noticed they have a really large Eyebox. So does that give or does that assist to a kind of a one-size-fit-all mode to where it's just easier for anybody to pick up and play?
Yeah. One of the beautiful parts of our system by turning the optics inside out and emitting this light field is now we have an Eyebox that is as big as the lens. And so for the listeners that don't know what an Eyebox means, in AR and VR systems, every headset has an inherent Eyebox and eye relief to it. And in VR and AR systems that put light into your eyes, the higher the magnification and the smaller the display, the smaller the eye relief, how precise it needs to be to your eyes. Will it work behind glasses? If it has a small eye relief, no, it won't work behind glasses. and Eyebox gets smaller. So it's this ratio of display size versus magnification. So, we're going to see there's a new pancake optics systems coming out. They're really thin with small displays, high magnification. Now we're going to start seeing, challenges with Eyebox on those. And as glasses get smaller, thinner, and smaller displays, Eyebox becomes very, very tricky. Because our system has basically an infinite eye relief. You can wear it over your glasses, so anywhere behind the lens is okay. And then it's called the the light field that's coming towards you is flat. There's no distortion depending on how the glasses are on your head. It's always flat towards your eyes. Means that you can wear the glasses crooked and you still get a good experience. Okay. In VR, you're always fumbling to try to get that sweet spot. Our system, it could be like pretty crooked and still be good. And it also means like if you're a child and you have narrow set eyes or wide set eyes, it doesn't matter because the light field's flat, no distortion, the Eyebox is big.
See, that's brilliant. Again, one size fits all. It's what I love the most about what you've built is that it's meant for literally everyone. There's no issue if you have astigmatism, if you, like you said, nearsighted, farsighted, if, for whatever reason you get headaches when you put on a VR headset or even one of these mixed reality headsets, because those are even causing some people to get dizzy or have headaches as well. And by it being a direct reflection back, it takes that worry completely out of it. One last question for you, I promise. Was there?
I can go all day. I don't mind.
I love it. Was there a Eureka moment? Like, was there just a day where this hit you out of the blue? Was there anything that made you think of it? Was there any sort of day that just was different than the others that made you like have this light bulb pop into your brain?
It was 1,000 little events that happened, and maybe I should tell a quick story. I'm sorry, this might be a little long-winded, but I need to explain how I got the itch for AR and then the little Eureka moments, the 100 little Eureka moments that got to this point.
Love it.
So I was very happy working, doing chip design at a job, and Gabe Newell from Valve Software started approaching me to start the hardware lab at Valve. I wasn't terribly interested to go work at a game company, pretty happy where I was at the time, but he was relentless, and finally he convinced me to come join the company. And when I joined, he's like, this is your mission. Like, there's a problem in gaming right now. There's hardcore gamers, there's semi-casual gamers, there's hyper-casual, there's gamers that used to game. There's there's people that have never gamed. And households are made up of all these people and they never cross. He's like, I think there's probably some kind of hardware solution that can bring the whole family together in the living room to play games together. And he says, put a dream team together and go figure it out. And I'm like, coming from the toy industry, I'm like, wow, this is exactly what we try to do is like identify, a gap and how we can delight someone and then execute on it.
Right.
And so for the first couple of years I was at Valve, our team, we were just exploring everything, all kinds of crazy things. We had military VR headsets, we had military grade AR systems with medical trackers that they used to track scalpels for surgery, just to see like what was possible. We had electrodes hooked to people's heads to see if we fed them emotions back into games, if it would somehow like bridge the gap and get people more engaged with games. And maybe it's a wacky new controller. Maybe that's why people don't play games. And that's where like motion controllers started to come in. It's like, for instance, a quick little story on our controller. People always joke, it looks like a barbecue lighter. And this is not really a mistake at all. Like, you can hand this to grandma and grandpa who've never played a game before and say, poke the video game character with the end of the barbecue lighter looking thing and pull the trigger, and now you'll be able to lift it in the air. Hand those same people an Xbox controller. They'll hold it upside down. They will like throw it down in frustration. Anyway, so we were doing all of this research, and it was super fun. It was a dream job. We just got to explore everything and had an unlimited budget to do it. Now, the optical part of our system came as a total accident. I quickly started to realize AR was the way that you could bring people together, AR with motion controllers and hand tracking, right? So I was trying to solve the near-eye optical problems, like how can we get past 35-degree field of view with an AR headset, which no one's really been able to do except for, let's say, make a giant spaceman helmet. And so I had this optics bench set up with all this optical gear on it, projecting an image, and I had a beam splitter that I could look into, and I could see this little 20, 30-degree field of view image, and just struggling to figure out how to expand that field of view. And then one day I'm reconfiguring, I put a beam splitter in backwards, so instead of going in my eye, it was projecting out into the hardware lab. And one of my colleagues was doing laser bounce experiments for tracking. He had a piece of this special retroreflective material on the wall. And 25 or 30 feet away, I saw this beautiful image just in the retroreflector.
Oh, cool.
And I'm like, that's weird. And then I fixed my optical system and went back to, struggling to figure out how to make a good AR headset. And then months and months went by with no luck. And I'm like, that weird property I saw, what if, I just gave myself more space, and there was just something in the room that I could just bounce the light off of. And that was it. It took me months to piece it together that, really the solution to the problem was turn it inside out and just do it backwards from what everyone else is doing. Fortunately for me, Valve, got really excited about VR. They went down that path. They didn't want to do AR. And so I went to Gabe Newell and actually bought this optical technique from Gabe. He was very generous and sold it. And I was able to go off and develop it on my own. And then after being outside of Valve, I discovered hey, I was doing what's called a collimated display. So it was very similar to a near eye display, still had that eye strain problem. And then I made an observation. I'm like, okay, this material has a gain in which the light rays come back to you. If I pre-compensate the light going out, I can mimic a light field. And so we did a quick test and sure enough, oh wow, now I can look at this virtual object that's up close and it's in focus and everything behind it's out of focus, and then move to the next one. The next one, I'm like, oh my God, through one lens change, we could solve the holy grail of AR, which is make a light field that solves Vergence accommodation. So it was hundreds of little things, I think I started at Valve 12 or 13 years ago, and I think I've been outside of Valve for 8 years. So this has been a long journey to get here.
No doubt.
And it's great. Now we're shipping. People are like, I got my kit. It's even better than I thought it would be. And I'm proud of that. Our team doesn't overhype. Yeah. It's just it does this one thing great, and that's all we promise.
Hey, that's perfect, though. I love how it was an accident that it doesn't always hit you right over the head, right off the bat, right? But I love that it's the inside-out way of thinking, too, though. So it's like the Wii, but for AR. Its usability is meant to be for everyone. Anyone and everyone can do that.
It's funny, being here in Silicon Valley, there's all of this urban legend around so-and-so had this inspiration and just figured it out instantly, and that, boom, this whole industry came out of it. And I think that's a lot of BS. If you really go talk to these people or you go look at it really close and you're like, oh, there were 1,000 little things that led up to this point where this one person put 2 and 2 together, and then it created a whole industry or a new product. And I don't think, groundbreaking technology just happens in a vacuum.
Usually not. Not. Well, I'll tell our audience at home, thanks for tuning in. Jeri, seriously, thanks for being here today. I thought this has been nothing but fun. Such a great conversation. And for those at home, if you are looking to have the coolest D&D or any sort of home entertainment, connect your friends and family across the world, seriously take a moment and go take your gaming experience to an entirely different level. You should go to tilt5.com/shop and go reserve your Tilt 5 setup today. It's only $5. It's a non-refundable deposit, but it saves your place in line so that you can get the glasses, board, and controllers, and it's only $359. And then speaking with Jeri, she let me know as well that there's a discount if you do bulk or group orders as well, so don't miss out on that opportunity. Jeri, fantastic talking to you today. Seriously, I really, really enjoyed it. Thanks for the insight.
Fun. Thank you.
Where can our audience find you on social media? Where's the best place to reach out to you?
I'm usually cutting up on Twitter, so if you go to Jeri, Jeri Ellsworth, Ellsworth, and you can go see my shenanigans there. Pretty easy to find out there.
Awesome. Well, I enjoyed our interview today. I do also want to thank our sponsor for the podcast, Kincannon XR. Thank you for sponsoring our podcast. You can find them on socials at Kincannon XR. And then you can find this podcast on social medias as well at ETIB Podcast. Like, comment, subscribe, send to a friend. Let everybody know. Check this out. It's going to be amazing. I want all of our listeners to hop on board and get one of these Tilt 5 boards and experience it for themselves. So that's it. I've been your host, Brock Reining. We're going to talk some more emerging tech next time. Jeri, you've been nothing but a delight. Hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. It was so fun.